The war room fell silent as another red dot vanished from the holographic display. Commander Hyunwoo watched with growing dread as the 7th Fleet signal disappeared completely. That made it 12 coalition fleets lost in the past month alone. "Sir, we're receiving the final transmission from Admiral Kexthera's flagship," reported Lieutenant Dalsu, his voice barely steady. The main screen flickered to life. Through the static came the desperate voice of the Karathi admiral. "The cold. It's everywhere. Hull temperature dropping below survivable levels. My crew is freezing solid at their stations. The Vorthak ice cannons have turned our entire fleet into ice sculptures." The transmission cut to static. Another fleet dead. Another species learning that their advanced heating systems meant nothing against the Vorthak Empire's terrifying cryogenic weapons. Hyunwoo rubbed his tired eyes. 3 years. 3 years of this frozen hell, and the coalition was no closer to victory. If anything, they were losing ground faster each day. The reptilian Karathi died within minutes of exposure to the Vorthak's absolute zero weapons. The insectoid Vextai lasted slightly longer, but their compound eyes froze and shattered like glass. Even the crystalline Gelnari, despite their rock-like bodies, became brittle and broke apart when the temperature dropped too far. "Commander!" called out Captain Eunji from across the room. "The casualty reports from the Kepler defense line are coming in." Hyunwoo didn't want to hear them. He knew what they would say. More frozen ships, more crews turned into ice statues, more proof that the coalition's warm-blooded species were completely helpless against an enemy that weaponized winter itself. The Vorthak had appeared from the galactic rim 2 decades ago. At first, the coalition had underestimated them. They looked like walking ice sculptures themselves, standing over 8 feet tall with crystalline blue skin and breath that turned to frost in normal atmosphere. Their ships were things of beauty and terror, designed like frozen palaces with weapons that could turn space itself into a killing field of absolute zero. What made them truly dangerous wasn't just their ice weapons. It was how they used them. The Vorthak would enter a system and begin cooling entire planets. Oceans froze solid. Atmospheres became liquid, then solid. Within days, thriving worlds became frozen wastelands where no coalition species could survive. "Sir, General Vexthul is requesting immediate reinforcements for Sector 7, Dalsu reported. "His forces are trapped on the ice moon of Calyx Prime. Surface temperature is minus 200 degrees and dropping." "Tell him we have no reinforcements to send," Hyunwoo replied grimly. "Every available ship is either frozen solid or running for warmer space." The truth was painful but undeniable. The coalition's greatest scientific minds had tried everything. Advanced heating systems that the Vorthak simply overwhelmed with colder temperatures. Energy shields that became brittle and shattered in the extreme cold. Special thermal suits that protected crews for maybe an hour before the cold seeped through and killed them. Captain Eunji approached with a data pad. "Commander, I've been studying the Vorthak battle patterns. They're not just random attacks. They're systematically targeting our supply lines and warm world colonies. They want to force us into the cold zones where they have complete advantage." "And it's working," Hyunwoo admitted. "Our species evolved on warm worlds. We need heat to survive. The Vorthak know this, and they're using our own biology against us." The door chimed and Science Officer Minho entered looking exhausted. He had been working around the clock trying to find some weakness in the Vorthak forces, some way to fight back against an enemy that turned the very vacuum of space into a weapon. "Any progress on countermeasures?" Hyunwoo asked hopefully. Minho shook his head. "The quantum analysis of their cryogenic weapons shows they can reach absolute zero in seconds. No known material can withstand that kind of temperature shock. Our ships simply weren't designed for this kind of warfare." "What about biological countermeasures? Some way to help our crews survive longer in the cold?" "I've run the numbers 100 times, sir. The Karathi's cold-blooded physiology makes them especially vulnerable. They literally cannot function below certain temperatures. The Vextai's insect biology means their fluid systems freeze and burst. The Gelnari fare better, but even they become too brittle to move or fight." Hyunwoo walked to the large viewport overlooking the coalition fleet. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species. All designed for different environments, but all sharing one fatal weakness. They needed warmth to survive. They needed conditions that the Vorthak could eliminate with a single weapon discharge. "Commander?" Dalsu called out urgently. "Priority transmission coming in from Coalition High Command." The holographic display showed Fleet Admiral Zixandra, the Vextai leader, whose compound eyes reflected the strain of endless defeats. All sector commanders, the situation has become critical. The Vorthak have deployed a new weapon they call the Stellar Freeze. Early reports suggest it can freeze entire star systems. We are authorizing the use of any and all available resources to stop this threat. Hyunwoo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Vorthak weapons. A weapon that could freeze star systems would end the war in days. The coalition would be wiped out completely. There is one more thing, Admiral Zixandra continued. We are requesting immediate assistance from our newest member species. The humans have been contacted and their response is unexpected. The transmission switched to show a human female in a simple blue uniform. She had short black hair and calm dark eyes that seemed oddly unconcerned by the crisis. This is Admiral Sojin of the Human Defense Fleet. We have received your distress call regarding the Vorthak ice weapons. Our analysis is complete and we are prepared to assist. The HSS Winter's End and escort fleet are already en route to the Kepler defense line. The transmission ended, leaving the war room in stunned silence. Humans, the newest and most primitive species in the coalition. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, and their technology was centuries behind most coalition races. Sir, Captain Yoonji said quietly, what can humans possibly do against weapons that have defeated our most advanced fleets? Hyunwoo stared at the empty holographic display where the human admiral's image had been. Something in her eyes had been different. Not fear or desperation like he saw in every other coalition commander's face. Something else entirely. I don't know, he admitted. But right now they're the only help we're going to get. Outside the viewport, another coalition ship's lights went dark as its heating systems failed. Another crew was freezing to death in the cold vacuum of space. Another small victory for the Vorthak Empire's campaign to turn the galaxy into a frozen graveyard. Soon, Hyunwoo would learn that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. And sometimes the species you underestimate the most are the ones best equipped to survive what others cannot. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace with none of the dramatic flair that coalition forces expected. No massive energy signatures. No overwhelming display of advanced technology. Just 12 ships that looked almost primitive compared to the sleek crystalline vessels of the Gelnari or the biomechanical marvels of the Vexte General Kexthul of the Karathi. Defense Corps watched through his command center's main viewport as the human flagship approached. The ship called Winter's End was blocky and gray, built like some kind of industrial transport rather than a warship. Its hull was covered with strange external equipment that the Karathi sensors couldn't identify. These are our reinforcements? General Kexthul hissed through his translator. His reptilian features showed clear disappointment. 12 primitive vessels against the might of the Vorthak Empire? Beside him, Hive Queen Zilandra of the Vextai clicked her mandibles in agreement. Her compound eyes reflected the same doubt. My analysis indicates human technology is at least 3 centuries behind coalition standards. Their weapons appear to be simple kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams. Commander Hyunwoo studied the tactical display showing the human formation. Something felt different about these ships, but he couldn't identify what it was. They moved with purpose and confidence that seemed odd given the desperate situation. Incoming. Transmission from the human flagship, reported Lieutenant Dalsu. The main screen activated, showing a human male with weathered features and calm gray eyes. He wore a simple uniform with minimal decoration. This is Captain Dong Hyun of the HSS Endurance. We're here to assist with your Vorthak situation. General Kexthul stepped forward, his massive frame towering over the communication console. Captain Dong Hyun, I am General Kexthul, commanding officer of this sector. With respect, your small force cannot possibly make a difference against Vorthak ice weapons that have destroyed hundreds of our most advanced ships. Captain Dong Hyun's expression didn't change. General, we've reviewed your tactical reports. We understand the challenges you're facing with extreme cold environments. We'd like to coordinate our approach with your existing forces. There is no approach that works, Hive Queen Zilandra interjected, her translated voice carrying frustration. The Vorthak weapons create temperatures that kill our crews in minutes. Our heating systems cannot compensate. Our armor becomes brittle. Our weapons malfunction. It is hopeless. We see the problem differently, replied a new voice as another human appeared on screen. This was a young woman with sharp eyes and short black hair. I'm Lieutenant Ye Jin, tactical officer. We've been studying your battle records. Ye Jin activated a holographic display showing coalition fleet movements over the past 3 years. Your forces consistently attempt to fight the cold with technology. Heat generators, thermal barriers, insulated armor. The Vorthak simply overwhelm these systems with colder temperatures. What else can we do? Commander Hyunwoo asked. Our species require warm environments to function. That's where you might be thinking about this wrong, Yejin said. Instead of fighting the cold, what if you worked with it? The coalition commanders exchanged confused looks. General Kexthul's translator crackled as he spoke. Work with conditions that kill our people in minutes? That makes no logical sense. Captain Dong-hyun leaned forward. General, may we request permission to conduct reconnaissance of the forward positions? We'd like to examine some of the frozen coalition ships. Those vessels are death traps, Hive Queen Zilandra warned. Internal temperatures below -100 degrees. Any crew member who enters dies within minutes. We understand the risks, Dong-hyun replied calmly. 2 hours later, Commander Hyunwoo watched in amazement as human shuttles approached the wreckage of coalition ships that had been written off as total losses. The Karathi cruiser Flame of Justice had been frozen solid 3 days earlier. Its entire crew of 200 was presumed dead. Human shuttle team has docked with the Flame of Justice, Dalsu reported. They're actually going inside the ship. The tactical display showed human life signs moving through the frozen corridors of the Karathi vessel. Temperatures inside registered at -150 degrees. No coalition species could survive more than seconds in such conditions. This is Sergeant Ji-ho, came a voice over the communication channel. We've located survivors in the engineering section. 17 Karathi crew members in emergency hibernation pods, requesting medical transport immediately. The command center fell silent. Survivors in conditions that should have killed everyone aboard hours ago. How is this possible? General Kexthul demanded. Sir, Lieutenant Dalsu said, checking his readings repeatedly. The humans have been working inside that frozen ship for over an hour. Suit telemetry shows they're operating normally in temperatures that would kill us in minutes. Captain Dong-hyun appeared on screen again, this time wearing what looked like a modified environmental suit. Frost covered his faceplate, but his voice was steady. General, we've rescued 34 survivors from 3 ships you marked as total losses. Our medical teams are treating them now. Your people can survive in those conditions? Commander Hyunwoo asked. Our homeworld has some challenging weather, Dong-hyun replied with what might have been humor. We've had to adapt. Over the next few hours, human teams continued their impossible rescue operations. They moved through frozen coalition ships like the deadly cold was merely an inconvenience. They repaired systems that alien engineers had declared permanently damaged by temperature shock. They recovered valuable equipment from areas no coalition species could enter. Lieutenant Yejin provided a constant stream of tactical analysis that confused and impressed the alien commanders. She pointed out flaws in coalition strategy that seemed obvious once explained but had been invisible to species that viewed extreme cold as certain death. Your formations bunched together. When the Vorthak deploy ice weapons, she explained. This allows them to freeze multiple ships with single weapon discharges. If you spread out and use the cold zones as cover, you could limit their effectiveness. Use cold zones as cover? Hive Queen Zilandra asked. Those areas kill our crews. They kill your crews, Yejin agreed. They don't kill ours. As the day continued, more evidence mounted that humans were somehow uniquely suited to fight in conditions that crippled every other coalition species. They moved through frozen battlefields like they belonged there. They operated equipment that should have malfunctioned in extreme cold. They rescued people that everyone else had given up for dead. General Kexthul watched human engineers working on the exterior of a frozen Karathi destroyer. They moved with confidence and skill in vacuum conditions that would have been instantly fatal to his people. Commander Hyunwoo, he said quietly, I believe we may have underestimated these humans. Yes, Hyunwoo replied, studying the tactical displays showing impossible rescue operations and strategic analyses that revealed new possibilities. I think we all did. On the main screen, Captain Dong-hyun was coordinating with his officers. Behind him, rescued coalition crew members were being treated by human medical teams. Ships written off as hopeless losses were being repaired and restored to service. For the first time in 3 years, Commander Hyunwoo felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Maybe these primitive newcomers, with their simple technology and strange immunity to killing cold, were exactly what the coalition needed. Maybe the war wasn't lost after all. The alarm klaxons screamed across the Kepler defense line as Vorthak ships emerged from hyperspace. Dozens of ice-blue vessels shaped like frozen cathedrals moved in perfect formation toward the coalition fleet. General Kex Thule watched his tactical displays with the familiar dread that had haunted him for 3 years. "Vorthak ice cannons charging," reported his tactical officer. Temperature readings dropping across all forward positions. Within minutes, the space around the coalition fleet began to shimmer with crystalline formations as the Vorthak weapons turned vacuum itself into a killing field. 3 Karathi destroyers immediately began emergency retreats as their hull temperatures plummeted below survivable levels. "All coalition forces, pull back to minimum safe distance," General Kex Thule ordered. It was the same order he had given hundreds of times before, the same tactical retreat that had cost them system after system, but this time something different happened. "Human vessels are advancing," Lieutenant Dalsu reported with confusion. "Captain Dong Hyun's ships are moving directly toward the Vorthak formation." Commander Hyunwoo stared at the tactical display in disbelief. While every coalition ship fled from the expanding zone of deadly cold, the 12 human vessels accelerated straight into it. "Captain Dong Hyun, you're entering a lethal temperature zone," General Kexethul transmitted urgently. "Your crews will freeze in minutes." Dong Hyun's calm voice replied over the communication channel. "Understood, General. We're proceeding as planned." Chief Engineer Minsu appeared on the communication screen from the human flagship. He was a middle-aged man with steady hands and eyes that showed no fear of the approaching ice weapons. "General, we've made some modifications to our ships based on our experience with extreme environments." "What kind of modifications?" Hive Queen Zilandra asked, her compound eyes focused intently on the human engineer. "Well," Minsu said, checking readings on a display behind him, "instead of trying to heat our ships against the cold, we've designed them to operate in it. Our hulls are built from materials that actually become stronger at low temperatures. Our systems are designed to function in conditions that would shut down normal equipment." The tactical display showed human ships entering temperature zones that had disabled coalition vessels in seconds. But instead of slowing down or showing signs of distress, the human ships seemed to become more maneuverable. "How is this possible?" Commander Hyunwoo asked. Captain Dong Hyun appeared on screen wearing what looked like modified armor designed for extreme conditions. "Commander, our homeworld taught us some hard lessons about surviving in cold. We learned that sometimes you don't fight the environment, you adapt to it." The first human ship reached the Vorthak formation and immediately opened fire, but their weapons were unlike anything the Coalition had seen before. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, they fired what looked like concentrated bursts of supercooled matter. "They're using cryo-weapons," Science Officer Minho reported with amazement. "The humans are fighting ice with ice." The Vorthak ships responded by increasing the power of their freezing weapons. Space around the human vessels became so cold that it began to crystallize into solid matter. Any coalition ship would have been instantly destroyed, but something unexpected happened to the human ships. They didn't just survive. They seemed to thrive. "Human vessel frostbite reporting successful engagement," came a new voice. "Commander Tae-young here. We've disabled 2 Vorthak cruisers using thermal shock tactics." "Thermal shock tactics?" General Kexthul asked. Lieutenant Yejin's voice joined the communication channel. "General, we discovered something interesting about the Vorthak physiology. They're not actually immune to cold the way we assumed. They use environmental suits and heating systems just like you do, but they're even more vulnerable to rapid temperature changes." On the tactical display, human boarding shuttles were approaching disabled Vorthak ships. The Coalition commanders watched in fascination as human troops in specialized armor began cutting through Vorthak hull plating. "Boarding. Team Alpha has entered Vorthak vessel," reported Sergeant Jiho. "Enemy. Crew is incapacitated by equipment failure. Their heating systems couldn't handle the temperature fluctuations." Commander Hyunwoo realized what the humans had discovered. They're not fighting the cold. They're using it as a weapon. "Exactly," Captain Dong Hyun confirmed. "While you've been trying to protect your people from extreme temperatures, we've been learning to use those temperatures as tools." More human ships engaged the Vorthak formation. Each engagement showed tactics that seemed impossible to Coalition observers. Human vessels dove through ice fields that would have shattered alien hulls. They operated weapon systems in temperatures that should have frozen all mechanical components solid. Commander Tae-young led assault. Teams that moved through frozen space in armor that looked almost primitive compared to Coalition equipment. But where advanced alien technology failed, human simplicity succeeded. Their gear was built to work in conditions that would kill sophisticated systems. The difference, explained Chief Engineer Min Su as human forces systematically disabled Vorthak ships, is that your technology tries to create perfect, controlled environments for your crews. Ours is designed to work in imperfect conditions because that's what we're used to. The battle that should have been another Coalition defeat turned into something unprecedented. For the first time in 3 years, Vorthak ships were retreating. The ice weapons that had terrorized the galaxy were being turned against their creators by a species that treated deadly cold as just another working condition. Human boarding teams have secured 3 Vorthak vessels, Jiho reported. We're downloading their navigation data and weapon specifications. General Kexthal watched the tactical display with growing amazement. Not only were the humans winning, they were capturing intact enemy ships and equipment. They were doing things that Coalition forces had never imagined possible. Captain Dong Hyun, he said, your people fight like they were born in frozen space. In some ways we were, Dong Hyun replied. Our planet has ice ages, frozen continents, weather that kills anyone who isn't prepared. We learned to be prepared. The Vorthak formation broke apart as more ships fell to human tactics. The remaining enemy vessels began emergency hyperspace jumps, abandoning the field for the first time since the war began. As the battle ended, Commander Hyunwoo looked at readouts showing impossible things. Human ships operating normally in temperatures that would have killed Coalition crews instantly. Human weapons that used the enemy's own tactics against them. Human soldiers moving through environments that were supposed to be instantly fatal. Commander, Lieutenant Dalsu said quietly, I think we need to reconsider our entire approach to this war. Yes, Hyunwoo agreed. Watching human teams begin rescue operations on Coalition ships that had been damaged in the battle. I think the humans are about to teach us a lot about fighting in the cold. For the first time since the war began, the Coalition had won a battle against the Vorthak Empire, and they had done it by following the lead of the species they had underestimated most. The emergency alert reached every Coalition command center simultaneously. Admiral Zixandra's voice crackled through the communication channels with barely controlled panic. All forces, priority alert. The Vorthak Empire has deployed their ultimate weapon. Repeat, the stellar freeze is active. Commander Hyunwoo watched in horror as the tactical display showed what was happening in the Arcturus system. Entire planets were turning white. Their blue oceans became solid ice in minutes. Their green continents disappeared under sheets of frozen atmosphere. Within hours, thriving worlds with billions of inhabitants had become frozen tombstones. Temperature readings from Arcturus Prime, reported Lieutenant Dalsu, his voice shaking. Surface temperature has dropped to -400 degrees and is still falling. All life signs have ceased. General Kexathal's massive frame shuddered as he processed the data. They're freezing entire star systems. Not just ships or space stations. Whole worlds. The stellar freeze weapon was beyond anything the Coalition had imagined. It didn't just create localized cold zones like the Vorthak ice cannons. It somehow altered the fundamental temperature of space itself across light years of distance. Stars dimmed. Planets became iceballs. Everything that lived in the affected systems died within hours. Coalition High Command is ordering full retreat from all forward positions, Hive Queen Zilandra announced through her translator. All species are to evacuate to the galactic core regions immediately. But as Coalition fleets began their desperate retreat, Captain Dong Hyun's voice cut through the panic. All Coalition commanders, this is the human fleet. We're moving to investigate the stellar freeze weapon. Captain, you cannot be serious, General Kexthal protested. This weapon has just destroyed 4 star systems. Your 12 ships cannot possibly survive what killed entire worlds. We need to try, Donghyun replied calmly. If we don't stop this weapon, the Vorthak will freeze the entire galaxy. Dr. Hyawan appeared on the communication screen from the human research vessel. She was a young woman with bright eyes and an expression of scientific curiosity that seemed out of place given the crisis. Commanders, we've been analyzing the stellar freeze weapon signature. We think we understand how it works. Doctor, please explain, Commander Hyunwoo said urgently. The weapon creates a cascade effect that spreads cold through quantum fields. It's like dropping a very cold stone into a warm pond. The cold spreads outward in waves until it reaches equilibrium. How do we stop something like that? Science Officer Minho asked. We don't stop it, Dr. Hewan said with a slight smile. We redirect it. The human fleet advanced toward the expanding stellar freeze zone while every coalition ship fled in the opposite direction. Commander Hyunwoo found himself following the human ships at maximum safe distance, unable to look away from what might be humanity's final sacrifice. Human fleet has entered the outer edge of the stellar freeze effect, Dalsu reported. Temperature readings are impossible, -600 degrees and dropping, but the human ships continued forward. Their hulls began to glow with strange energy patterns as the extreme cold activated systems that coalition sensors had never detected before. "This is Captain Jae-min aboard the icebreaker," came a new voice. "We're approaching the weapon's focal point. The cold is incredible, but our systems are holding." "How are they surviving?" General Kexthul demanded. Chief Engineer Min-soo answered from his position aboard the flagship. "General, we didn't just modify our ships for cold weather. We designed them to use extreme cold as a power source. The colder it gets, the better our systems function." The tactical display showed something that defied belief. As the human ships moved deeper into the stellar freeze zone, they actually became faster and more maneuverable. Their weapons began charging with energy drawn from the deadly cold itself. "We've located the stellar freeze generator," Captain Jamin reported. "It's a massive Vorthak construct in the center of the Arcturus system. The weapon is feeding off the heat of the star itself, converting thermal energy into quantum cold." Dr. Haiwan's voice joined the communication channel. "Captains, I'm uploading targeting data for the generator's weak points. If we can disrupt the quantum field alignment, we can reverse the cascade effect." "Doctor, even if you reverse the effect, how do you restore warmth to frozen star systems?" Commander Hyunwoo asked. "We don't restore it," she replied. "We redirect the weapon's energy back at the Vorthak Empire, turn their ultimate weapon into their greatest weakness." The human ships began their attack run on the stellar freeze generator. The massive Vorthak construct was protected by dozens of ice ships and defense platforms, all designed to operate in the weapon's deadly cold field. But the humans had turned the Vorthak's greatest advantage into their own strength. While enemy ships struggled with equipment failures caused by the extreme cold, human vessels moved like they were designed for these conditions. "Boarding teams are away," reported Sergeant Jiho. "We're going directly into the generator core." "Commander," Hyunwoo watched human soldiers in specialized armor move through space that was cold enough to freeze solid matter instantly. They cut through Vorthak defenses that should have been impregnable, moving with the confidence of people who had trained for exactly these conditions. "Generator core secured," Jiho announced. "Dr. Haiwan, we're ready for your virus upload." "Uploading now," the doctor replied. "The quantum cascade should reverse in 3 minutes." As the human teams worked inside the stellar freeze generator, something unprecedented began to happen. The expanding zone of deadly cold started to contract. Frozen planets began to warm. Ice-locked atmospheres turned back to gas. But more importantly, the redirected energy began flowing toward Vorthak space. Their own ultimate weapon was now freezing their home systems instead of coalition territory. "Vorthak fleet is in full retreat," Captain Dong-hyun reported. "They're abandoning the Arcturus system." "Human teams, excellent work," General Kexthul said, his translator conveying amazement. "You have turned certain defeat into impossible victory." As the human fleet emerged from the dissipating stellar freeze zone, Commander Hyunwoo realized that the war had fundamentally changed. The coalition no longer faced an unstoppable enemy with an ultimate weapon. Thanks to humanity's unique abilities, they now had hope of actually winning. "All coalition forces," he transmitted to the fleet, "prepare for counteroffensive operations. The humans have shown us how to fight back." For the first time in years, the galaxy had a future that wasn't frozen solid. Admiral So-jin stood before the largest gathering of coalition commanders in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of species filled the massive command amphitheater aboard the space station Haven's Rest. For the first time since the war began, the mood was not one of desperate defense but of aggressive hope. The Vorthak Empire believed their stellar freeze weapon made them invincible, So-jin began, her calm voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. They were wrong. "Today we launch Operation Thermal Strike to take the war directly to their home systems." General Kexthul leaned forward in his scaled seat. "Admiral, while your people's abilities with extreme cold are remarkable, the Vorthak still control over 200 star systems. How can we possibly mount an effective offensive? We're not going to fight them the way they expect, Sojin replied. We're going to teach you what humans learned long ago. Sometimes the best weapon against ice is more ice. Lieutenant Colonel Wu Jin stepped forward to address the assembly. He was a compact man with sharp eyes and scars that spoke of many battles fought in harsh conditions. Commanders, we've developed new tactics based on human cold weather warfare. We call them ice hunting techniques. The main display showed tactical formations that looked unlike anything the coalition had ever seen. Instead of the massive fleet battles that had characterized the war, the humans proposed small unit operations moving through the coldest regions of space. The Vorthak expect us to avoid their ice fields and frozen zones, Wu Jin explained. Instead, we'll use those areas as highways to move unseen through their territory. We'll strike where they least expect us. Captain Jinwoo of the assault ship Frostbite added details about the specialized equipment humans had developed. We've built ships designed specifically for long-range operations in extreme cold. They're smaller than traditional coalition vessels, but infinitely more capable of surviving in frozen space. Commander Hyunwoo studied the tactical plans with growing amazement. You're proposing to use the Vorthak's own ice weapons as cover for infiltration missions. Exactly, Sojin confirmed. While they've been using cold as a weapon against us, we've been learning to use it as camouflage, as transportation, and as a source of power for our operations. The first phase of Operation Thermal Strike began within hours. Human ships equipped with new stealth technology moved through frozen asteroid fields that Vorthak sensors couldn't penetrate. The extreme cold that made these regions uninhabitable to most species provided perfect concealment for human forces. Lieutenant Ye Jin coordinated the intelligence gathering phase from her position aboard the reconnaissance vessel Winter's Edge. Target confirmed. Vorthak Supply Depot Zerion Station is operating with minimal defenses. They don't expect anyone to attack through the frozen nebula surrounding it. All units begin approach, Wu Jin commanded from his flagship. Remember, we're not just destroying their facilities. We're proving that nowhere in this galaxy is too cold for humans to reach. The assault on Zerion Station demonstrated the new reality of the war. Human commandos in specialized armor moved through space that was cold enough to instantly kill any other coalition species. They cut through Vorthak defenses that had been designed to protect against conventional attacks but were useless against enemies who thrived in killing cold. Station secured, reported Sergeant Jiho as his team completed their objectives. Vorthak garrison was completely unprepared for assault forces operating in -700-degree conditions, but the real breakthrough came when Dr. Haiwon's teams began analyzing captured Vorthak technology. Working in laboratories cooled to temperatures that would have killed alien scientists instantly, she made discoveries that changed everything. Commanders, we've found the weakness we've been looking for, she announced during the next strategy meeting. The Vorthak aren't just vulnerable to rapid temperature changes. Their entire technology base depends on maintaining precise thermal conditions. She displayed holographic models of Vorthak equipment that human teams had captured. Look at these power systems. They require exact temperature ranges to function. If we can create thermal chaos in their infrastructure, we can shut down entire fleets. Captain Dong-hyun immediately saw the implications. Doctor, are you saying we can disable Vorthak ships without destroying them? Better than that, Hayawan replied with enthusiasm. We can turn their own vessels against them. Their ships will become uninhabitable to Vorthak crews but perfectly suitable for human operation. The second phase of Operation Thermal Strike put this discovery to devastating use. Human boarding parties began capturing intact Vorthak vessels by manipulating their thermal systems. The enemy crews would be forced to evacuate while human teams took control of some of the most advanced ships in the galaxy. This is incredible, General Kexthal observed as he watched tactical displays showing human forces operating captured Vorthak dreadnoughts. You're not just defeating them, you're stealing their fleet. Admiral Sojin smiled as she coordinated the expanding offensive. General, humans have always been good at adapting to new environments and making use of available resources. The psychological impact on the Vorthak Empire was enormous. For centuries, they had dominated through fear of their ice weapons and the certainty that no species could survive in the conditions they created. Now they faced an enemy that not only survived in those conditions, but used them to become more dangerous. Vorthak High Command is recalling fleets from occupied systems, Intelligence Officer Dalsu reported. They're consolidating their forces to protect their core worlds. Perfect, Sojin replied. That's exactly what we want them to do. The more they cluster their ships together, the easier it becomes to use their own thermal weapons against them. The final assault of this phase targeted the Vorthak fortress world of Calyx Prime. It was protected by the largest concentration of ice weapons in the galaxy and had never been successfully attacked by any coalition force. Lieutenant Colonel Wu Jin led the assault personally, commanding a mixed force of human vessels and captured Vorthak ships. All units, remember the plan. We're not here to destroy this world. We're here to claim it. The battle for Calyx Prime became a masterpiece of human cold weather tactics. Using the planet's own frozen atmosphere as cover, human forces moved through defense networks that couldn't detect them. They turned the Vorthak's ice weapons against their own installations by manipulating thermal targeting systems. Planetary defense grid is down, Captain Jinwoo reported as his teams completed their sabotage missions. Vorthak ground forces are evacuating to heated bunkers. Then we follow them into the bunkers, Wu Jin replied. This is what humans do best. We go where others can't survive and we make it our home. By the end of Operation Thermal Strike's first week, the strategic situation had completely reversed. The Vorthak Empire found itself retreating from territories they had held for decades. Their ultimate weapons had become useless against an enemy that turned environmental hazards into tactical advantages. Commander Hyun-woo watched the latest battle reports with wonder. Admiral So-jin, your people have accomplished in 1 week what the coalition couldn't do in 3 years. Commander, So-jin replied, we're just getting started. The real counterattack begins now. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans decided to go on the offensive, even the coldest regions of space became hunting grounds. The frozen ruins of the Kepler system stretched endlessly in all directions. What had once been a thriving solar system with 5 inhabited worlds was now a graveyard of ice where the original stellar freeze weapon continued its deadly work. At the heart of this frozen wasteland stood the Vorthak Emperor's final fortress, a massive ice palace built around the weapon that had terrorized the galaxy. Admiral So-jin studied the tactical displays aboard her flagship as the combined human and coalition fleet approached the system's edge. This is where it all started, she said to the assembled commanders. This is where it ends. Emperor Kethvar himself commanded the Vorthak defenses from within his ice fortress. The ancient ruler had never been seen by coalition forces before, but intelligence reports described him as the most powerful Vorthak leader in their history. His fortress was protected by the concentrated firepower of 300 ice ships and the original stellar freeze weapon that could destroy entire star systems. Admiral, General Kexthul said over the communication channel, the thermal readings from that fortress are beyond anything we've encountered. Temperatures near absolute zero extending for millions of kilometers. Even your people cannot survive conditions that extreme. General, you're right that this is the most dangerous environment we've ever faced, So-jin replied. But that's exactly why we're the ones who have to face it. Captain Dong-hyun coordinated the final assault from his position aboard the Endurance. The ship had been modified extensively during the war, its hull now covered with thermal conversion systems that could draw power from the most extreme cold imaginable. All ships. Begin final approach, Dong-hyun commanded. Remember, the Vorthak expect us to die in the cold. Let's show them what happens when the cold makes us stronger. The battle for the Kepler system began unlike any engagement in galactic history. Instead of trying to avoid the deadly ice fields surrounding the Vorthak fortress, the human fleet accelerated directly into them. Ships that should have been disabled instantly by the extreme cold began to glow with energy, drawn from the frozen space around them. Human thermal conversion systems are operating beyond theoretical maximums, Science Officer Minho reported with amazement. They're actually using the stellar freeze, weapons' own energy output to power their advance, Lieutenant. Colonel Wu Jin led the assault forces through ice formations that would have instantly killed any other species. His specialized armor had been upgraded throughout the war until it could function in conditions approaching absolute zero. Breaching the outer defensive perimeter, Wu Jin reported as his teams cut through Vorthak ice barriers that were supposed to be impenetrable. Enemy forces are retreating to heated zones within the fortress. But Dr. Haiwan had prepared for this final battle with her greatest discovery yet. Working in laboratories cooled to impossible temperatures, she had developed a virus that could reverse the quantum cascade effect of the stellar freeze weapon. "Admiral, the virus is ready for deployment," she announced from her research vessel. "Once I upload it to the weapon's core systems, it will not only shut down the stellar freeze but reverse its effects across the entire galaxy." "Doctor, what do you mean by reverse its effects?" Commander Hyunwoo asked. "Every system the weapon has frozen will begin to thaw," Hyewon explained. "Frozen worlds will warm. Dead stars will reignite. The weapon will undo all the damage it has caused. The assault on Emperor Kethvar's fortress required every technique humans had developed during the war. Teams moved through corridors where the air itself had frozen solid. They fought through chambers where their breath turned to ice crystals before leaving their mouths. They operated in conditions that redefined the meaning of extreme survival. Sergeant Jiho reached the fortress core first, leading a strike team through the weapon's central chamber. The stellar freeze generator towered above them like a frozen cathedral, its crystalline surfaces radiating cold that could kill planets. "Core chamber secured," Jiho reported. "But sir, we have a problem. Emperor Kethvar is here personally, and he's not retreating." The Vorthak Emperor emerged from his environmental suit for the first time in recorded history. He stood over 10 feet tall with skin like living ice and eyes that burned with cold fire. His voice echoed through the chamber with the sound of breaking glaciers. "Impossible, mammals," he spoke through translators that crackled with frost. "You survive in the cold that kills gods, but this weapon is beyond your understanding. It draws power from the heat death of the universe itself." Captain Dong-hyun entered the chamber wearing armor that had been pushed to its absolute limits. Ice crystals covered every surface, but his systems continued to function. "Your Majesty, the cold doesn't kill us. It makes us stronger." Emperor Kethvar activated the weapon's final protocol, attempting to freeze not just the Kepler system, but the entire galactic arm. The temperature dropped so far that space itself began to crystallize. Stars throughout the region dimmed as their nuclear fires were suppressed by absolute zero. But humanity had prepared for this moment. Captain Dong-hyun connected Dr. Hyewon's virus directly to the weapon's core systems, while his body absorbed enough cold to kill armies. His sacrifice allowed the virus to spread through the quantum cascade network. "Virus uploaded successfully," Dr. Hyewon announced as readings across the galaxy began to change. "The stellar freeze effect is reversing." What happened next was beyond the Vorthak Emperor's comprehension. The weapon that had been his ultimate expression of power began working in reverse. Instead of spreading deadly cold, it began radiating life-giving warmth. Frozen worlds throughout Vorthak space began to thaw. Ice-locked stars reignited with nuclear fire. "This cannot be," Emperor Kethvar said as his own fortress began to warm beyond his species' survival range. "The cold is eternal. The freeze is absolute. Your Majesty," Admiral Sojin said as she entered the chamber wearing armor that glowed with thermal energy. "You forgot something important about ice. It always melts eventually." The Vorthak Empire's surrender came within hours. Faced with warming temperatures throughout their territory and the loss of their ultimate weapon, they had no choice but to negotiate peace. Emperor Kethvar himself was rescued by human medical teams when his environmental systems failed in the rapidly warming fortress. Commander Hyunwoo stood in the command center watching as frozen systems throughout the galaxy reported signs of returning life. Planets that had been ice balls for years were developing atmospheres again. Dead stars were beginning to shine. "Admiral Sojin," he said, "your people have not just won this war. You've restored life to half the galaxy." "Commander," Sojin replied, watching the tactical displays show green lights returning to systems that had been marked as dead zones. "We just did what humans do best. We survived the cold until spring came again." General Kexthul approached with data showing the full scope of the restoration. "The quantum cascade reversal has affected over 400 star systems. Worlds that were frozen wastelands are becoming habitable again. This is unprecedented. The war was over. The stellar freeze weapon had been turned into an instrument of restoration rather than destruction." The Vorthak Empire, dependent on cold for their dominance, found themselves adapting to a galaxy that was warming up. But perhaps most importantly, the coalition had learned something valuable about their newest members. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their fundamental ability to survive conditions that would destroy anyone else and emerge stronger because of it. As Admiral Sojin watched the first reports of life returning to previously frozen worlds, she smiled. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the species you underestimate most are the ones best equipped to save everyone when the worst happens. The age of ice was over. The time of warmth had begun again.